The water had been too calm for 3 days straight. Captain Marcus Chun stood at the helm of the starship Poseidon, watching the liquid methane ocean of Nereid 7 stretch endlessly beneath them. The ship hovered just 50 meters above the surface, its scanning equipment searching for the rare crystalline deposits that made this distant moon worth the 6-month journey from Earth. Marcus had captained vessels across a dozen star systems in his 23 years of service. He had seen things that would make lesser men lose their minds. Creatures that defied explanation, worlds that bent the laws of physics. But nothing had prepared him for what rose from the depths that morning. The first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh, was the one who spotted it. Her voice came through the bridge communicator with an edge of disbelief that Marcus had never heard from her before. She was a woman who had faced down pirates in the asteroid belts and survived a whole breach near Jupiter. Nothing shook her. "Captain, you need to see this. Starboard side. Something is surfacing." Marcus walked to the observation window and looked down. The methane ocean, which normally appeared as a deep orange under Nereid 7's pale sun, had begun to glow. A soft blue light emanated from beneath the surface, growing brighter with each passing second. It reminded him of the bioluminescent creatures in Earth's deep oceans, but this was different. This light had purpose. It moved with intention. The crew gathered at the windows. 27 men and women who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they would spend years away from everything they loved. They stood in silence as the blue light rose higher and higher until finally it broke the surface. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The creature that emerged was humanoid in shape, but that was where the similarities ended. Its skin was the color of deep sapphires, smooth and glistening with the liquid methane that ran down its form like water. Its eyes were enormous, taking up nearly a third of its face, and they glowed with the same ethereal blue light that had announced its arrival. Long tendrils of what might have been hair, or perhaps some kind of sensory organ, flowed behind it, moving as if caught in an invisible current. It was beautiful, terrifyingly, impossibly beautiful. The creature turned its massive eyes toward the Poseidon and opened its mouth. The sound that came out was not a voice, not exactly. It was a frequency that bypassed the ears entirely and went straight into the mind. Every person on that bridge heard it differently. To some, it sounded like a song. To others, it was a whisper. To Marcus, it felt like a promise. "Come," the creature seemed to say, "come down to us. We have been waiting for you." Marcus watched as several members of his crew took involuntary steps toward the windows. Their eyes had gone glassy, their faces slack with a kind of peaceful surrender. Whatever this creature was doing to them, it was working fast. "All hands, step away from the windows," Marcus barked. His voice cut through the trance like a knife. Some of the crew blinked and shook their heads, confused. Others continued to drift forward, their hands pressing against the glass. The creature rose higher from the methane sea. More of its body became visible now. What Marcus had thought were legs were actually a long, sinuous tail covered in scales that caught the light and scattered it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. A mermaid. That was what Earth's legends would have called it. A siren. A monster that lured sailors to their deaths with songs and promises of beauty. But this was no legend. This was real, and it wanted his crew. "Lieutenant Walsh," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. "What are our engines reading?" Sarah tore her gaze away from the creature with visible effort. Her face was pale, but her hands were steady as she checked the console. "Full power available, Captain. We can be out of here in 30 seconds if you give the word." The creature's song grew louder, more insistent. Marcus could feel it tugging at the edges of his mind, promising warmth and comfort and an end to all the loneliness of space travel. It would be so easy to give in, so easy to just let go and drift down into those waiting arms. But Marcus had not survived 23 years in space by giving in to easy choices. "Full speed ahead," he ordered. Maximum thrust. Get us out of here now. The Poseidon's engines roared to life with a sound that drowned out the creature's song. The ship lurched forward, climbing rapidly away from the methane ocean. Below them, the Blue Mermaid let out a shriek that pierced through the engine noise and stabbed into their minds like a blade of ice. More shapes began to surface. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The ocean came alive with blue lights as creature after creature rose from the depths, their songs joining together into a chorus that threatened to overwhelm even the Poseidon's powerful engines. "They're following us," someone shouted. Marcus looked at the scanners. The creatures were rising fast, their tails propelling them upward with incredible speed. They were not confined to the liquid methane, it seemed. They could survive in the thin atmosphere above. They could pursue. "Increase speed," Marcus commanded. "Push the engines to 120%. Captain, that's beyond safe parameters. Do it." The ship shuddered as the engines were pushed past their limits. Warning lights began to flash across every console. The structural integrity alerts screamed their protests. But the Poseidon climbed higher, faster, putting distance between them and the creatures below. Marcus watched the scanners as the blue lights began to fall behind. The creatures were fast, but they had limits. They could not match a human-built starship running at full power. One by one, they gave up the chase and sank back toward the methane ocean. All except one. The original creature, the first Blue Mermaid they had seen, continued to pursue. It rose higher and higher, its glowing eyes fixed on the Poseidon with an intensity that made Marcus's skin crawl. There was intelligence in those eyes. Ancient, calculating intelligence. "It's still coming," Sarah said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The creature opened its mouth again, and this time its song was different. It was not a promise anymore. It was a warning. "You cannot escape us," it said directly into Marcus's mind. "We have waited 10,000 years for visitors from the stars. We will not let you leave." Marcus gripped the edge of his console until his knuckles turned white. He thought about all the stories he had heard as a child. The ancient sailors who had tied themselves to the masts of their ships to resist the call of the sirens. The explorers who had stuffed their ears with wax to block out the deadly songs. Those sailors had known something that humans had never forgotten, no matter how far they traveled into the stars. Sometimes, the only way to survive was to run. "Navigation," Marcus said. "Calculate a jump to hyperspace. Anywhere. Just get us out of this system." "Captain, we haven't finished our mission. The crystalline deposits. There's nothing on this moon worth dying for. Make the jump." The creature was getting closer. Marcus could see its features clearly now through the rear observation window. It was smiling, revealing rows of teeth that were far too sharp for any benevolent being. Its long fingers reached out toward the ship, as if it could simply grab them from the sky. "Hyperspace jump calculated," the navigation officer reported. "Ready on your command." The creature's song shifted again. Now it was pleading, begging. It showed Marcus visions of a dying race, of a people who had waited millennia for contact with other intelligent life. It promised knowledge, technology, secrets of the universe that humanity had only dreamed of. For a moment, Marcus hesitated. What if he was wrong? What if these creatures truly were friendly, and he was simply too afraid to see it? But then he looked at his crew. He saw the glazed eyes of those who had been caught in the creature's initial trance. He saw the ones who were even now pressing their faces against the windows, tears streaming down their cheeks as they reached for the beautiful monster outside. These creatures did not want friendship. They wanted prey. "Jump," Marcus ordered. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Poseidon entered hyperspace. The creature's scream of rage and disappointment echoed through the ship for one terrible moment before it was cut off by the silence of faster-than-light travel. They emerged 3 light years away, in empty space far from any star or planet. The crew stood in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. Several people were crying. Others were shaking. The ones who had been caught in the trance looked around in confusion, with no memory of the past hour. Marcus sat down heavily in his captain's chair. His hands were trembling now that the danger had passed. He thought about the creature's final words, its promise that they could not escape. It had said they had waited 10,000 years. It could wait longer. "Lieutenant Walsh," he said finally, "send a priority transmission to Earth. Warning classification. Extreme. No ships are to approach Nereid 7 under any circumstances. Mark the entire system as forbidden space." "Yes, Captain." "What should I say happened here?" Marcus thought about that for a long moment. How did you explain monsters to people who had never seen them? How did you convince humanity that some places in the universe were simply too dangerous to explore? "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them we found something ancient and hungry. Tell them it's still waiting. And tell them that the only reason any of us are alive is because we didn't stop to ask questions." The message was sent. The Poseidon limped home on damaged engines, carrying a crew that would never forget what they had seen. Some of them would have nightmares for the rest of their lives. Others would retire from space travel entirely. But the warning worked. Nereid 7 was marked on every star chart as forbidden territory. Ships that came within scanning range reported seeing blue lights rising from the methane ocean before quickly jumping away. The creatures were never studied, never contacted, never approached again. In the centuries that followed, humanity expanded across the galaxy. They made contact with dozens of alien species, some friendly and some hostile. They colonized worlds that made Nereid 7 look like paradise. They faced threats that could have ended their entire species. But they never forgot the lesson Marcus Chung had taught them that day. Some things in the universe were not meant to be understood. Some songs were not meant to be heard. And sometimes, the bravest thing a captain could do was order full speed ahead and never look back. The blue mermaids of Nereid 7 continued to wait. They surfaced whenever ships passed overhead, their songs calling out across the void. But no one answered anymore. Humanity had learned that there were worse things than loneliness. There was the alternative,